Hey everybody, this is Alzorath, and welcome back to Diablo 2! This is another build video! This is one of the, if you couldn't tell by the thumbnail and the title, this is going to be one of the more standard kind of cliche builds. This is one that you guys may have noticed I started with the Poison Necromancer. I think the Poison Necromancer has some competitive and compelling arguments. This is the Bone Necromancer, its cousin. Same kind of similar tree, almost even similar equipment, although there are some notable differences. And it can, basically, it relies on faster cast rather than damage over time. That's the main difference in its equipment. But this build is basically the go-to because there's very few magic immunes. Although, if you're going up to Baal, you are guaranteed to have at least one immune. That is the second wave, because the mummies are immune to magic. There's a few others that are immune to magic. There's some zombies in Act 2 and stuff like that. But for the most part, you don't have to worry about things resisting your attacks. So it's very preferred for hell difficulty because you can punch through a lot of stuff. And yeah, that's why most people rely on it. Now, as far as the Baal strategy that you guys are probably watching in the background right now, it is worth noting, you may notice I switched between Bone Spirit and Bone Spear. That is because with this setup, the setup that I have on this particular character, with the Mercenary's Meditation, you actually have a surplus of mana with Bone Spear, but you do not with Spirit. So, Spirit is just going to be the higher DPS of the two. And not by much, and we'll show that off in the actual episode when we're looking at the skills. So, as far as, well, the build goes, which we should be closing in on actually finishing the Baal fight. It's a little bit of a longer Baal fight on this, but it's not obscenely long. You can literally just stand there as a turret most of the time, unless he teleports around or gets a bunch of tentacles out or something like that. One strategy that I like to do is I like to keep far enough back after getting a lock on him that my mercenary will just clear off the tentacles. So that's my strategy with this one. You can get a decent amount of magic find on this build. In fact, we have almost, I think, 200% on it. But as far as this build, it's not geared around Magic Find. You can only imagine what it would do if you were actually geared around Magic Find. So, yeah. So, anyway, let's go ahead and actually jump into the actual visuals of the character. Hopefully we're done with the Baal end of things. But as far as stats go, pretty bog standard for our casters. We get enough strength and dexterity for our equipment, which currently I have a little bit in dexterity because I have two sets of equipment on here, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. And we have the maximum vitality after that. No points in energy because our gear generally is going to give us a lot of mana. Now, this brings us up to about 1,200 some odd life, maybe 1,300, depending on, yeah, just what level you are. We're level 92. I don't take us up to 99 because most people are not going to reach 99 because 98 to 99 takes so many hours, even if you're doing it optimally on players 8. And then you have the energy just 27 because we have plus stats. But as far as the skills, this one should actually be relatively obvious. Well, that one's not, but we'll talk about that one in a minute. The most obvious thing is going to be you're investing in the bone tree. You have Bone Spear, Bone Spirit, Bone Prison, Bone Wall, and Teeth because they are all synergies. They're amazing things. I'll talk about the order in just a second. We have 1 point in Corpse Explosion because it's a prereq, but we use it. And we do not actually invest in Bone Armor, but we use Bone Armor. You may notice it swirling around me, and it absorbs 820 physical damage. That's an 820 damage buffer against physical damage, at least. So, it does help out. It brings us up to about 2,000 resistance, 2,000 life versus physical damage, which there is a decent amount of. There's not a ton. We're more afraid of lightning anyway, though. But you might as well use it because you're going to be getting Bone Wall and Bone Prison anyway. And then in the summoning skills, we have 1 in Clay, 1 in Golem Master, and 1 in Summon Resist, just for a Clay Golem. Clay Golems are extremely useful, especially with plus skills, which we want a lot of on this build. So the plus skills make him not necessarily super tanky. He's got 6,400 life. He'll die here and there. It's normal. But he will slow the enemies down. So over 50% slow. And now for the weird stuff and the things worth noting. First of all, I have a point into, let's actually swap back to that. I have a point into Dim Vision. You can see, hey, wow, my wand has Confuse on it. Yeah, I will be using Confuse as well. But that's generally things you get kind of like towards the very end whenever you're going to start using this guy for farming. Confuse, that is. Dim Vision is your way to deal with things like gloams, ranged nasties, just stuff like that. Things that are an actual threat to you, you dim vision them. You can separate bosses' minions from them with dim vision. You can shut down a lot of various types of enemies with it. It's a very useful skill. Basically, with this radius, we cast it towards the edge of the screen, and we can usually catch most of the enemies off of there if I'm not being lazy. So, yeah, you every now and then just cast it. It's super cheap. With a Meditation Mercenary, you're not going to run out of mana casting it because of how cheap it is. Confuse is another addition to this that you can use, because Confuse can be used in much the same effect, except it makes those enemies attack each other. It is worth noting that Confuse has its drawbacks, but it's still a fairly solid spell. I think a lot of people underestimate the whole left side of the curse tree because it's the control curses as opposed to the just actual I'm going to rip you to pieces curses. So, yeah, Dim Vision and Confuse are extremely good. Attract is conditionally good. So that's going to be one of those oddities that, you have to consider whether you actually want to use it. Attract is one of the... basically, you drop it on a monster, and the enemies treat it as if it's a friend of you, so they'll attack it. It puts it almost in like a third party. You can still kill the monster, but it pulls them towards it, and they'll attack that. They can still get distracted by you, so that is worth noting. And it's not one... Attract is also nice in that it can't be overridden. So you could, say, put Attract on a monster and then amp damage all the rest of them. So, and it wouldn't override the Attract. Similar thing with Confuse if you just want to create a brawl. Confuse, I personally like because it just causes them to just go into like a big old nasty brawl. As far as other curses, amp damage works well with Corpse Explosion, and Decrepify works good for... It's also kind of control. It slows and weakens the enemies, so yeah. And it also does a mini amp damage. It's just a good catch-all curse, but it does require 4 points, and we're still putting into synergies at 92. So I just go with Dim Vision. Gets you through late normal into Nightmare and Hell, and it works throughout all difficulties. It's just good for that. And it's got a decent duration on it, too. And radius. It's just a solid skill. So, anyway. Now, for the other note that I was going to make, and this is one that a lot of people will disagree with me, and I know that there are a few people who actively disagree with me, because while I was setting up for this recording, I did watch a couple other people's Bonemancers build videos and stuff like that. And I did look up a few other people's guides. I disagree with a few of them on it. But a lot of people will say to max teeth first. I disagree. I honestly, whenever I'm going through normal, if I was going to be just going straight Bonemancer, normal, Nightmare, Hell, just all the way through, I would get teeth up to probably about 12 to 15, just until you get up to, I believe, yeah, it would be, 15. Because you want to go, I would get 1 point here, 1 point there. Dump points into teeth, 1 point into Corpse Explosion. Keep dumping points into teeth, get a point into Bone Wall, and then put it in between Bone Wall and Bone Spear. As you're going up there, and then just get your value points and everything else. I max out Bone Spear first, and then go into Bone Spirit, using extra points into Bone Wall and Bone Prison. The reason I do this, instead of dumping into Teeth, because yeah, Teeth is nice early on, Act 1, Act 2. I don't use it in Act 3 because usually I'm 18 by then. If you're playing through non-speedrun, you're going to actually be 18 before Act 3. You're usually wanting to get 25 in Act 2 out of the canyon, for those curious. I put into these because these are basically serving as your golem. Because generally speaking, I'm not going to get golem until, well, I am not going to get golem until I'm like 24 or so. Yeah, that's 24. My brain is kind of foggy right now. But yeah, I usually don't get Clay Golem until a bit later. I use the Bone Walls and Bone Prisons just as a thing. You can get this early, and it works good. It's just 1 point, 1 point, and then 1 point. And it will come around with you, but by about Act 4 or 5, unless you have the plus skills in normal, you're not going to be having that survive very long. Whereas Bone Wall and Bone Prison can lock something down. Bone Wall, you put on bridges. Bone Prison, early on, you end up putting around specific groups of enemies that are troublesome. I generally, by late game, end up just using Bone Wall more, simply because I can drop it out and kind of position it where I know the enemies are going to spawn. So I can kind of lock them off and then go for it there. But they're both good spells, and I use them in kind of the place of a golem. But Teeth does not do enough damage early on, and it doesn't do enough damage until, like, after a certain point. You can see we actually do okay damage with it here. It's about 1,000. But I don't use it late game, and I don't use it mid game, so I don't invest points into it, whereas I do invest points in these because I do use them. That's my main kind of, like, big note on the bone skills, is you have to invest in the ones you use. And late game, you're not going to be wanting to use Teeth very much. We could actually go kill some things with Teeth, though. I think we might do that a little bit towards the end of the video whenever we're demonstrating the build, because it can kill. But, yeah, Bone Spear, depending on which setup we have, it's 4,000 or 5,000 damage, roughly, give or take. And then you have Bone Spirit, which doesn't really change very much, for reasons. Iron Golem with Insight on this build. For those of you wondering, this is being recorded live on Twitch, so I do answer questions. This is actually an important question. Why don't I use Iron Golem with Insight? One, I don't have the spare points to invest in it. It is possible to do that, but frankly, this build has a lot into the bone tree, so I'm not going to have the spare points to make the Iron Golem sturdy enough to keep the Insight up, unless I have a bunch of trash insights I use. Which is possible. It's fine. You can actually do that pretty easily. It's not expensive to make an insight. But yeah, I don't have the points to spare to make the Iron Golem durable enough. That's the only reason I don't do that. If I were to do that, like if I had the points or the plus skills to make it viable, which honestly 15 is not enough in hell. If I had the points to make that viable with an insight on him, I'd actually put a I'm trying to remember the name of the polearm. Reaper's Toll. We have one in here. No, we don't. We have we do. Reaper's Toll. I would put a Reaper's Toll on the mercenary. It's possible to do that. You can actually sacrifice some of the bone damage to actually do that if you really want. That's another alternate strategy. Generally, I prefer... It's just hard to kind of justify in this. Now, as far as the last part of this, we have the gear, which is one of the reasons why I said I have two sets of gear. There's actually a lot of overlap in these. You can mix and match them. They are different kind of main weaponry. But first things first, before we go over what's in our hands, let's go over what's on our body. First of all, we have a bunch of just Grand Charms fungal. I have my, Glorious, my favorite one here. It's my favorite, Grand Charm, period. It's one of my few lifers. But as far as gear goes, we're going Trangles. This is just for the plus curses. Whenever we have the Confuse up and the Blind up and stuff like that, you can get more plus skills to make them last longer and have bigger range. If you're going more Corpse Explosion end of things, you could use Mage Fists, which also give the 20% faster cast rate, but they also give +1 fire skills, which, guess what? Corpse Explosion is a fire skill. So, yeah, you can choose between the two of them. This also gives you a little bit more resistances. It doesn't really help you any other place other than the curses, faster cast rate, and resist. Mage Fist would actually give you better mana regen as well, so that is worth noting, just for those of you who are kind of going for that. Now, as far as the rings, pretty obvious. 2 Stones of Jordan, just for more max mana, because we like it. In the Arachnid Mesh area, well, in the Belt area, we have Arachnid Mesh. This is for more faster cast and plus skills. The other stuff is nice. The maximum mana is nice. That's pretty much the only other thing that's nice. Slows target, we're never going to be hitting anything, so it doesn't matter. But it's pretty solid. There really isn't another belt you'd want to use on this. You could use just basically anything that gives you cannot be frozen or reduce freeze duration, anything that gives you mana. You could make a caster belt if you really needed to. There's a few things that you could throw on here that are okay, but Arachnid Mesh is just pretty much what you want to aim for. It's the plus skill belt. You want the plus skills. Now, as far as the Silkweave, that's our boots. I go for this just for the mana. There are other options. You could do War Traps for Magic Find. You could do Sandstorm Trek. You could do... Those are pretty much the 3 I'd look at, mostly. You could do some other odd things. You could... Just as long as it's got faster run walk. I would prefer having the increased max mana, though. So that's one thing that I like Silkweave for. Silkweave is a little harder to find, but boy, howdy is it worth it, especially with that mana with each kill thing as well. It just helps out a lot. Up here on the amulet, I actually have probably one of my best crafted. I've made more caster amulets, for those of you that are wondering. I burned up some more of my resources doing that. We finally got a good one for the Necro. But it's you could do this. If you don't have this, you could actually go for Mara's. But for as far as the crafted Necro amulets, most of the stuff on here, superfluous. Yes, the resistances are nice. Yes, the dexterity is nice. But the key points are going to be the Necromancer skill levels and the faster cast rate. You don't need 20% on it, because I think with this setup, we actually hit the breakpoint and then some. I think we're at 135 with the Hodo, so we are a little bit over on that one. So, yeah, it works. 20% is probably preferred, so +2 and 20. Everything else is just extra, so if it's just got some resist on it, that's perfectly fine as well. You probably want lightning resist to be the kind of like focus if you're going for single resists. You can get it much higher. As far as the helmet, we're just using the Harley Crest. You can get better circlets, but I have not found one personally, so we just have the Isted Shako that I pass around. Other options for Shako, you could put an in here for resist. You could put a bear in here for physical damage reduction. Personally, I would say Ist or is your best bet for what to socket into a Shako, because you're going to be passing it around a lot. So you want it to be kind of useful for everybody. And those are the two runes that are, well, useful for everybody. Bear is more only just useful for your melee characters. On the armor, this is one of the few times I recommend Enigma. I hate Enigma, but I recommend it here because it's actually good. So, +2 all skills, you got faster run, walk, and teleport. You've got some strength boosts if you actually need it. Does help you equip this bugger. So, we are using it for that. Yes, this is perfect base. This is damage reduction, life after kill, and getting better chance of getting magic items. Yeah, you can see it on there. It's a superior Archon plate, for those wondering what's being said. So yes, it is a superior Archon plate underneath that. You can make it with any 3-socket armor. It doesn't need to be super high defense. You're not going to be in combat, so it's not going to matter very much. So that's just, it's nice. I do have like 2 of these, oddly enough, floating around. Different defense numbers, but yeah, they're nice. Anyway, over there we have the Spirit Monarch. This is my better Monarch. It's 35% faster cast rate. This is going to be the weapon slots. We have 4 things equipped. You can mix and match them. On the shield side, you're going to either have Spirit Monarch, or usually Homunculus, or possibly a rare head. So I'm being told Ringmail is the best base for the Enigma. It looks better. I have to give it that. But anyway. Fashion Diablo. As far as Homunculus goes, it's just a good go-to. It's easy to shop for. Like, if you're trading online, just say, I'm looking for a Homunculus. Boom, you've got access to a Homunculus. They're usually relatively cheap because a lot of people don't run Necromancers. Throw an in it and it has really good resistances. And it does a lot of work. So, yeah, it's just a good one that you can pass around to pretty much any Necromancer build as well. The +2 curses is nice, but the +2 Necromancer skill levels, faster block, all that kind of stuff. You can go max block with a Homunculus as well relatively easily. Also gives regenerate mana. It's just all around a good head. But I go with Spirit mainly on this one because the faster cast and the all skills is +2 as well. It gives a little bit of resist, not as much as the Homunculus. And yeah, it's just, it does take more strength though. Now, as far as the main weapons, we've got, as far as rares, if you're going for rare heads, you want +2 skills, you'd want +2 skills, and you'd want better block and some sockets. So that's one of those things. Oh, I'll show you something after this brew that you might like. I think I might need to transfer it in though. But anyway, we've got the Spirit and that over there. But on rare, yeah, you want +2 skills, you want resists, and you want sockets. Block is nice. You have a few stats are nice, stuff like that. But you can actually get some decent stuff going on there with the 2 sockets, because you could put 2 in it. So you can get some fun stuff, and you can also get plus skills to Spear or Spirit or Wall. any of those would be nice, or even to confuse and stuff like that, like we have on our Poison Necro head. Now, over in the weapons, we'll start with the Heart of the Oak. I use this as my primary just because I like the faster cast, and we'll see just how fast cast it is in just a minute. +3 all skills, 40% faster cast rate, some mana, some resists, all around just really, really nice. I don't use the charges ever. Replenish life, +20 is also nice. The rest of it is superfluous. It doesn't really do anything for us, but 10 dex is not terrible either, but we don't go for max block on this one, so it's okay. So, you could use Call to Arms on this. I didn't because I didn't want to transfer it over and have to show 7 different pieces of equipment. So, yeah, Call to Arms you can actually always put on the alt. That's just kind of a given. You'd have Call to Arms and Spirit. But, yeah, I also like this +3 all skills because it does add to the teleport, making it even cheaper. Whereas on the white, it is +3 poison and bone skills, and we actually have a really good bone spear one here. I got this in hell difficulty out of, I want to say it was either Ancient Tunnels or the, I want to call it the pit, but it's not the pit. It's the cave in Tomoe Highland, which is also a level 85 area. So that one tends to just be kind of like there. You can shop for a +2 bone spear wand. You'd want a bone wand in Act 2 normal from Drognin. So if you get a door there, that's, yeah, it's the pits. So yay, I was right. My brain was farting. But the bone wand is pretty solid. Honestly, for those of you wondering, +2 to the bone spear on here is from white, +3 is from the base. So if you get Bone Spear on the base, you can actually get some really nasty stuff going on in here. We have Confuse on it as well and Poison Nova. That's one thing that you'd be looking for on heads as well. As far as like alternate weapons, you could go with a Spirit if you can't find anything like this or that. Yeah, finding a good base for white can be troublesome. What I'd recommend is in normal difficulty, just keep re-rolling your normal difficulty map for Act 2. Until you get the door next to Drognin, and just run in and out. It takes probably an hour or two, but it's worth it if you're looking for just like a really solid weapon. If you don't have the patience for that, Spirit Sword. So let's go ahead and actually demonstrate this build real quick. And I will drop in the little bit of Blind. You can see they just stop caring. So yeah, that's why I like Blind. It separates them from Eldritch, and Eldritch just goes down really fast. And right now, this is with the white wand. You may notice, oh, that's not too slow of casting. It's reasonable. It's reasonable. But we're about to show off why I actually like Hodo a little bit more. The Hodo setup does get our max... Hey, let's go ahead and blind all you guys, so I don't have to deal with you guys actually shooting me. You can see, it's just a solid stream of just bones. It's awesome. I love it. Blind is... A lot of people underestimate Blind and Confuse. That whole right tree is like the unloved child. I personally, I don't always recommend it, but it has so many like useful applications. It just shuts so many things down. Gloams, these archers, just completely stops them. And since none of our spells actually help our bone damage, you want to use Blind to shut them down. So, yeah, you just drop it in there, they ignore everything, and it just nukes them. Dim Vision, yes. You can get, well, it applies the Blind effect. So, that's why I call it Blind. It's just Dim Vision. It's the first one on the left. It's a level 12 skill, no, level 6. Level 6 skill. So, at level 6, you can pop that 1 point into that. You have it for emergencies. As you start getting more plus skills, it gets bigger radius, and it gets more duration. It just scales so well with plus skills, it's hilarious. Confuse is another one that's really just a solid cast. They're not blind, they're really nearsighted. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But for those of you on YouTube, this is going to be the end of this episode. I was going to show off something. Oh yeah, I was going to show off teeth. Let's go to Act 1. I almost forgot I promised to show off teeth. We'll show off teeth. So here's a little bit of a bonus. This is what happens whenever you have a lot of synergies into teeth. It's hilarious, but it's... Yeah, Bone Spear is just going to serve you a little bit better in the long run. But you can still kill stuff with it. That's because... And it's not even max teeth right now. It's, I think, 3 points shy of max. So, it does work. You could beat the game like this. You can beat the game with teeth. It's just a little bit of a pain in the butt. So, anyway, for those of you on YouTube, keep gaming, have fun, peace out. This has been Alzorath, and I will see you guys next time. For those of you on Twitch, we're continuing on.